The audio grind.
So, I had a bit of a chat recently with someone that had been watching the podcast, and he's just got set up with his own sort of like home studio rig, fairly sort of modest, but he's just sort of started to find his way around a door and things like that. So I was having a little bit of a natter to him, and I said to him, if you've got any mixes that you want me to sort of have a look at and whatever, maybe I'll be able to sort of like give you a couple of pointers in the right direction. So he sent me this mix over, and it's obviously he's still kind of learning and stuff like that. And like I'm always trying to be real encouraging for people that are just getting started and sort of learning about recording and bits and bobs of processes and mixing and whatever. So I just wanted to sort of do a little bit today on tracking guitars for record and not for live performance, or should I say, creating a tone for record. It's completely different to creating a live sound.
Absolutely. Yeah, I get you. It is a completely different beast because, in a record, you've not got horrendous room reflections to battle because you're not, it's all on disc. But in live, you've got so many factors. You've got another guitarist who's most of the time they're not going to try and coordinate you with guitar tones unless they know it's like a thing that they're like conscious of.
Yeah.
So you've got these two awfully huge guitar tones, this fucking bass, which they do the same. They want their bass to cut through. They want it to be fucking nasty and punchy. You got these awful cymbals, and then some poor fucker of a singer trying to sing over the top of it all.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I sort of always find with actually like sculpting a guitar sound for record is, especially if you're working with like rock and metal music, is the most common mistake is, especially if you're looking at double tracking or quad tracking, is that people they'll build one enormous guitar sound that is really rich across the entire frequency spectrum, and let's say for that you've used like a model of a Mesa Boogie rectifier. And let's say you want to quad track that with something else. So you're going to have like, your Mesa sound left and right, and then you're going to layer that with maybe like a 5150 or a 6505 sound. So another rectifier type amp, which again is huge and will cover every single part of the frequency spectrum. If you've got two huge sounds, they're not going to sit with each other very nicely in a mix. You're just going to end up with an absolute wall of frequency that's going to become really, really, really difficult to manage. The mindset surrounding sculpting a guitar sound for record's got to be different. It's got to be balanced. And my first piece of advice would be try and get your gain down as much as you can. And I don't mean take the piss with it. I don't mean like, turn it down to the point where it's nigh on clean. But if you're looking for a little bit of chug, or if you're looking for a little bit of snap, a little bit of front end in your guitar sound, get your gain down to the point where you're uncomfortable with it, where it feels like you're having to sort of like battle it slightly to play, and then just take it up a little bit. And maybe it does mean that you'll have to be a little bit cleaner and a little bit more accurate in your playing when you're actually sort of doing the takes. But by the time you've layered those guitar sounds up, you're going to end up with a lot less hiss, a lot less fizz. You're going to end up with a lot, fewer sort of like spurious frequencies that are going to become problematic later on in the stage at mixing.
Yeah, I do things a little. It's the same sort of process, but like a different method. For me, it'd be do a guitar tone which you feel super comfortable with. So if you want a high gain tone, you can have that high gain tone. But then you also must do a track with barely any gain. And you kind of do this thing where in the mix, if it sounds like there's too much gain, you bring down... So just to explain a little bit better. So you do 2 takes for each line. So you do your high gain. So you do your high gain line and your low gain line. So say if you've got a guitar's pan left and right, and you've only done 2 just for the purpose of this, your left guitar needs to have 2 recordings, high gain and low gain, because if you're finding that all you're getting is white noise, you just turn down the distorted guitar a bit more, so you still got that, that chug behind it, but you're hearing kind of the attack of the low gain. But the reason why I kind of do it this way is because I work in a super destructive like workflow. Everything I do it's committed to. I commit to effects, I commit to cabs, I don't change things in post. Because one because I don't have time, and two, I feel like if you start changing things at the end, you're just going round this perpetual cycle of you know, you waste time, and especially when you're on the clock like us, you know, we need things to be done then, you know, like yesterday. You don't have time to be going back and changing this stuff. It's like, you know, same with pretty much in every aspect. Once I've finished recording my drums, or I've finished programming my drums, I've already picked the snare, I've already picked the kick, I've already picked my bass tone has already been picked before I'm while I'm recording in. Obviously, you can add stuff like compression afterwards. Yeah,
but that's different. That's part of the processing, you know.
It's part of the, you know, your mixing stage. But going in for guitars, I mean, you have the mindset of, I've got the benefits of the digital, being able to use my amp sim or use my cab sim, whatever, but I go about it in an analog way. So it's recorded, it's done.
It's printed.
You know what I'm trying to say? It's printed. Yeah, that's it. And you find that sometimes an overly distorted guitar tone you can get away with because you've got that safety net of the low gain.
Yeah. So, that's a good way of doing it. That's a good way of doing it. And I totally agree with what you're saying about like the mindset of committing to things. If you keep things open until the end so that you can still go back and maybe, like, you know, jig some velocities on the kick drum, or you can still go back and change your IR, you can still go back and reamp your guitar sound. You're always going to be sort of going through this little sort of cycle of what if I can just get this a little bit better? What if I can just get that a little bit clearer or whatever? There has to be a point where you do commit, you know, because it's just going to cost you time. Yeah. And if you're in, you know, the type of job that we're in, if it's costing you time, it is inevitably costing you money.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I just think, like, in terms of layering guitars, there's a couple of little sort of like nuggets, I guess, that I kind of have learned along the way. And I guess a lot of it comes from just knowing your own equipment. Knowing, for example, that, you know, this IR blends well with that IR. You know, one might be nice in a certain frequency area, another might be nice in another frequency area. Put them together, maybe EQ them slightly out of each other's ways, and, you know, it's going to make for a sort of clearer sort of sound. Pick your guitar sounds objectively.
So I've just got a bit of a question for you, and this is something that I definitely want to hear because I know for a fact to do it differently.
Always makes me nervous when you says things like this.
I know, obviously, asking you for like the stupid question of how you EQ guitars is just a stupid question because you don't know that the song and the mix we're working on. But how aggressive do you EQ your guitars after you've recorded them?
It completely depends on the source material, obviously. Are we talking lead guitars or are we talking like rhythm guitars? What type of guitars? Give me a hypothetical.
Everything. So basically, say, just for argument's sake, there's no vocal in this song because the vocal will influence things greatly, how you would EQ a guitar.
Yeah, it changed my decision making, totally.
Yeah. Absolutely. So just to take some variables away, you got your guitar tone, and your guitar tone sounds great. The IR, it all sounds great. But you're putting it to a track with some drums. How heavy are you EQing these guitars to get them sitting in a mix? And I mean, I'm not saying where to cut because obviously that depends on the song, but is it something you would normally do, go in and EQ your guitars a lot?
The situations where I have been absolutely surgical, yeah. I always like sweep the frequency spectrum with a really, really narrow Q parametric. So like I just pick something like Pro Q3, and I hunt for the whistles and the bells and the harmonics that have become sort of obnoxious. And I just go in and sort of just tame them with a dynamic EQ. And sometimes you just find that it just helps it to sort of like become a little bit more rounded and sound less harsh or aggressive in the mix. It just seems to sort of be a little bit more balanced because you're not attenuating all of those frequencies on a passive cut. You're going in dynamically and setting it to a point where it's just going to tame those frequencies at a certain threshold.
This is where I think you're definitely a better mix engineer than I am.
Why? It's only EQing, isn't it?
No, because like, you know my philosophy on this kind of thing. If you can't fix it with a free band EQ, you chuck it. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, I go in afterwards with my Pro Q3 and I drop points out for the vocal. You know, my philosophy is if I have to do a lot that is I can't do on a 3-band, on an API or a 73 EQ.
Yeah.
I'll do it again. It means I'm using the wrong tone. So it's...
obviously it's all open to opinion, I guess. But I mean, what I can say is problem areas that I find in guitars that I end up EQing a lot. 1.7K.
Vocal frequency.
Yeah, narrow cut at 1.7K on the rhythm guitars. I will do that more often than not. 3.2K narrow cut, 3.9K narrow cut. I've become really good at identifying those frequencies, and I can tell you that when I've got my biggest hob on the oven turned on, and if I'm cooking like onions or something like that on a night, on the lowest setting, it resonates at 1.7K. So I use that as a sort of reference for like learning frequencies and shit.
That's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, we've got quite different workflows anyway. I mean, I've always been a more producery sort of person. You've definitely always been more of a, you know, like mix engineer. You're quite perfect with your frequencies. A lot of my mixes I send to you are just mushes of noise that I have to fucking clean up afterwards because I've been spending so much time like getting the tones right. But it is definitely interesting to hear like how much you would actually go in for an EQ on a guitar, because for me it's not that at all. I mean, I use barely any EQ on my free bands, basically just notching it out of the vocal if there's a vocal there. I mean, sometimes I'll do a little bit more if I'm mixing a song and the vocal just isn't cutting through. Obviously, I'll start notching vocal frequencies out a bit more, like a bit more aggressively. But more often than not, it's just super small edits and cutting out some low end and mostly invisible changes. I mean, I use a multi-band on the bus, you know, set it to left and right mode instead of stereo, you know, just for the low end, for the chugs. But
the thing is, at that point, though, even if you're using multi-band compression, if you're splitting your compression into multiple bands in a way that's sort of acting as a bit of a dynamic EQ anyway.
Yeah, you're right, it is. But I mean, to be honest, I'd only use it on the low band.
Would you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's always going to change whereabouts you set your high and low pass filters. But I mean, like, if you're talking about sort of like rock or metal rhythm guitars, a common mistake that I see is the high pass filter not being set high enough. So if you're high passing at 60 hertz, it's like you might as well not bother. You know, you need to be thinking about getting up to 100, 120. And I always kind of think to myself as well, like, you know, if I've got like say for example like an 18 dB per octave slope set to filter out below 100 hertz, don't solo your guitar bus when you're EQing your guitar bus.
Yeah.
Have it at 100 hertz and then just creep it up and think, is this damaging the guitar sound? But also at the same time think to yourself, is this improving the mix?
Yeah.
Because sometimes maybe, yes, you can do a little bit of damage to your guitar sound if it's for the greater good. You know, I sort of try and approach it with a utilitarian mindset of, you know, it's all for the greater good. Nothing is more important or greater than the track itself.
Well, I think this is something you helped me out with in early days. I mean, I was used to high pass them far too much, and I'd have this hole between my bass and my guitars, and I think it is definitely like not soloing your guitar bus. I mean, it's the same when you're EQing your cymbals. You want to have a set of guitars in the background just for some context. But I always had this weird hole between my bass and my guitars because I was like, I don't get it.
Yeah, what lives there?
Yeah, like what am I supposed to do? And I think you do have to figure out like, right, which part of the bass is, you know, like just the actual fundamental and all the tone, and which part is just where the guitar should sit. So you kind of have to do some fucking real kind of, you know, what's going to win in this frequency kind of area. Because if not, you end up either with a super muddy kind of this low mid area, or you end up with a completely empty low mid area, and that's something I just could not fucking get. I could not grasp it. It's one of and just nothing lived there.
It's one of the harder areas of the frequency spectrum to master, I think, and I don't mean master in terms of mastering. I just mean in terms of like getting control over the low mids, especially working in sort of like rock, indie, metal. Yeah. Genres that are guitar driven, which we tend to sort of operate more with, don't we? It's a hard area of the frequency spectrum to get your head round, really, and get sounding nice and balanced.
Absolutely, and it's something I definitely have not only just because I lose track of time in my little bubble, but it feels like my journey up to the point of where I started doing it professionally, I struggled with it for so fucking long, and then you come along and it was like, yeah, mate, no worries, just fucking do it in context, and I'm like, oh yeah, cheers, mate.
No, but that's just chatting to people, isn't it, really? And that's just sort of like having an open mind to sort of try out other people's methods. There's been plenty of stuff with guitar where I've gone to you and gone, I'm struggling to get this, and you've helped me get it. It's you learn from each other's experiences, don't you?
Yeah.
So go on.
I'm going to say we should have started doing the audio grind a long time ago, because I think some of our early conversations were fucking gold.
Yeah, they were, to be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're definitely right. But yeah, couple of other things I just want to sort of throw in there before we round things up. If you've got like really, really heavy guitars, your waveform is probably going to look like a brick wall has hit it anyway. It's going to look squashed. I don't see the point in compressing that. You see people sort of like compressing the living daylights out of like brick-walled metal guitars, and I'm like, what's the point? Unless you're sort of compressing a specific frequency range with purpose, unless you're going in there with a multiband with a reason. I just think, why are we compressing like already compressed signal? Is it just because it's just like, well, it's what you do? It's like processing for the sake of processing at that point, because you think that every single insert. Every single like part of the insert list on your tracks needs an EQ, it needs a compressor, it needs saturation. It's just like processing for the sake of it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see it. I mean, I compress crunchy guitars, like low gain crunchy, I'd say, to get the spank. But metal guitars, it has never helped me out. It's always made things worse every time. And it's always caused pain, so...
Caused pain?
I completely agree. That's caused pain to my fucking soul, mate.
So, there's just a couple of little sort of like plugins I want to talk about that I will sort of often use on guitar sort of processing. And I'm sure you've got experience with all of these as well, I think. So, like, I am a big advocate for Valhalla Vintage Verb.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you dirty bastard, you
bastard.
But I just think I love, like, because it's so chorusy. It's got this really nice sort of, like, chorusy shimmer to it, and it just suits, kind of, like, dramatic, dreamy lead guitar parts so much. And the chorus space on it as well. Like, in terms of, like, the reverb mode. Oh, man, I love that. That goes on, like, all of my guitars. Well, lead guitars.
I knew you was going to say chorus space.
Yeah.
I knew you was going to say it. When I rang you up that time, I was like, mate, I've just got Valhalla, and it just sounds shit. I just can't get my head around it. He was like, you need to change the fucking size and the decay and all this shit. Bang it on chorus space. And I was like, fair play, lad. This is pretty. I do like the 70s one, though. I'm a big fan of the 70s reverb.
Oh, I'm an 80s one. I like this sort of like shimmery, slightly sort of like higher fidelity aspect of the 80s model on that. Another one is one that you introduced me to, which I now can't live without for sort of like 80s style lead guitars.
Oh, I know what you're going to talk about.
I'm going to say, don't you? So it's free. It's a free plugin, so everybody should go out and get it, if you're interested in this kind of stuff. Why wouldn't you be interested in this kind of stuff if you're watching this? It's called Tal, is it? The chorus plugin.
Yeah, Tal.
It's totally
Tal
free.
Chorus.
But, like, what is it? Is it modelled off the chorus unit of a Roland Juno?
Yeah, it's a Juno 60 chorus.
Right.
So it's modelled off. You can get an actual guitar pedal for it that I think... I can't remember who modelled it, but it sounds fuck all like a Juno chorus.
Oh, really?
But the plugin, though, really does sound like the actual Juno. It sounds exactly like it's the one taken out of their model of the Juno 60 synth. So it's literally just taken straight out the synth and just put as an audio unit plug-in.
Right. Well, I mean, I remember falling in love with it when I sent you a lead guitar track for something that you were working on ages ago. And remember, it was
the solo one. It was for Ian. The weird kind of Cobra Kai thing. Was it that?
Yeah, but the brief that you gave me for the solo was Power Rangers on steroids.
That was it. Yeah.
And I always kind of like hearing what other people do with my guitar parts, because 9 times out of 10 I'm sort of like producing my own guitar parts, mixing my own guitar parts. So it's kind of nice when someone else has worked with it so I can see what they've done with it, you know what I mean? It's like a bit of a treat, I guess. And you'd sort of like drenched it in this amazing chorus, you know what I mean? But that was the brief, wasn't it? Because it was like supposed to sound real 80s. And I was like, what is that chorus? What have you used on that? And you was like, oh, mate, it's free, go get it. And I went and downloaded it straight away. And then for the rest of the night, I was like playing on this like chorus. And I was like, it's so good.
It is good. It is a fucking great plug-in, that one.
So one more little sort of, maybe two, but we'll see. There's a Native Instruments delay called Replica.
I've never used this.
It's cool. It's got a really, really nice, easy-to-use ping-pong function on it. But my favourite thing about it is it's got an inbuilt phaser, so you can just put the phaser sound on the delay return. So like you can have like a ping-pong delay on the go that's kind of like got varying rates and degrees of phaser, and it just sounds kind of cool. That's like a bit of a secret sauce of mine.
Is it? I never knew that. I like the Valhalla delay. The ghost setting on the Valhalla.
I've never used that.
It's fucking great, mate. Really good delay for guitars.
How good it is was defined by how long you were saying F for then.
It's fucking, it is really fucking good. Like,
fucking
unbelievably
great.
Good.
Is it? What's it called?
Go on then, give us your last one. It's just called Valhalla Delay. That's literally it.
Maybe I'll go and check it out straight after this. Last one is another delay, FabFilter Timeless 3.
Yeah, it's good.
It just does exactly what it says on the tin. It's like most FabFilter products. It's very kind of like I don't know, kind of cold, I guess. It's not very sort of characterful. Whereas like something like the Replica's like instantly got its own sound, and the Valhalla delays instantly got its own sound, or the reverb even. But the attention to detail that you can go into with the FabFilter stuff, like the creative plugins like the delays, is absolutely nuts if you can be asked to get your head around it. But that crops up a lot on my lead guitar sounds.
Really, I'm not as patient. I do like Timeless, but for me, it's more of a vocal delay.
Oh, really?
But, because sometimes you really need to get to the nitty gritty. For guitars, being completely honest, a lot of my processing for guitars is set and forget. So I don't like to go in too nitty gritty because it needs to be something which is supposed to tan your ass rather than tickle your ears. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, but what about both? What if you could have your ass tanned and your ears tickled? Would that be something that interested you?
Yeah, but then you have it in your vocals and your guitars. So you have your nice ear tickling in your vocals and your ass getting tanned with the guitars. So that's how it works for me.
I'm going to have our lass coming through here in a minute going, what the fuck are you on about? Who are you on the phone to?
You bastard.
Yeah. Oh, class. Right, well, I think we've rambled on about guitar processing for long enough and IRs, so I think it's time that we bid farewell for another week.
Yeah. And you know what I'm going to say, don't you?
What are you going to say?
What am I going to say? What do I say at the end of every episode?
Is this the fact that 48% of our... I can't remember, something like that. 48%?
No, only 48% are subscribed. The rest of them are not. Only 48% of viewers are subscribed to watching. So subscribe to us. If you're the other fucking... I can't be asked to work the math out because I'm a bit stupid. But the rest of you, fucking subscribe. You know, we work hard, do this. You know, I know we have shitty internet. Well, I have shitty internet and crappy cameras.
You have really shitty internet.
But we do try and get these out. Yeah, it's really bad. The camera's going crazy now. I can barely hear what you're saying. But still, fucking subscribe. Don't be a bell.
Get subscribed, guys. And we'll see you soon.
The audio grind.